We are here because we are dedicated to helping the entire CrossFit community. Determined to elevate coaches, box owners, athletes, and everything in between, we believe that this mission will begin right here, right now. While this time and this goal begins with you, our hope is that you take this fire ignited within you and weave it into your own life with the same unrelenting passion to give those you have the privilege of coming in contact with the best hour of their day.
How many classes do you think you've coached in your entire CrossFit coaching career?
Ooh. Well, we can say that it's at least 750 because that's what I needed to qualify for my level 3. It is, damn, that's a good question. Let me do some rough math. So I'm gonna lowball this, and let's say 30 times 12 times 12. Yeah, I mean it's got to be.
Did you do 30 times 12 times 12?
Yeah.
What was the first 12?
12 months.
And in 12 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
But 30's, it's been way higher than that at some point. It's been way over. It's been like over 80 for like significant durations.
Right. 30
in a month.
30 at the beginning of CrossFit Rife was probably per week. That's only one class a day.
Well, no, because we had very limited class schedule. Like we didn't have anything in the beginning of the day, or so we didn't have anything in the middle of the day. Sorry, it was just like is whatever we could do before work and after work, essentially.
Gotcha. But
like
okay,
people,
so what was the number? 30 times.
It was right at 5,000.
5,000.
And that's minus. So it's definitely over that because I've done significantly higher for large chunks of time. And that's then whatever that is, however many hours just in the level 1 setting, probably creeping up on 200
well,
seminars.
Then that's not including seminars. Like level 1 seminar, in any given weekend, you coach the 3 breakout groups and you're at least a part of, 4 smaller breakout groups. So
Right.
call it 3 hours, call the 2, there's 5 hours minimum, not including the 2 workouts, right?
Right.
5 hours would be a low end. How many seminars have you worked?
I think it's just under. Yeah, I think it's right around 200.
So that alone's another 1,000 hours.
Or another 1,000, yeah.
So we're talking. I mean, you're creeping up on the 7, 8, 9,000 hours. As I would say,
yeah, probably. I think it's pretty close to that. Probably. I don't think it's 10,000 like coached hours yet, but for sure 10,000 practice. Like including everything I run, all of that for sure over 10,000. But I don't think it's 10,000 over like actively on the floor coaching. Maybe it is. I don't know, but it's for sure probably like around the 7,000 or 8,000.
Yeah, and then we're not even factoring in evaluations for your coaching staff, coaches meetings where you're coaching. So, but point being, okay, you and I have both put in the time that the 10,000, quote unquote 10,000 hours, if you will. My question to you, and the topic I want to discuss today, is: do you ever show up to class? And I know the answer already. It's yes, because I can speak for myself. And I don't want to say not give it your all, but kind of leave some of your ninja skills behind. In other words, what are some of the things that a really seasoned coach such as yourself, myself, can still forget to bring to any given class?
Well, I can talk. I had a conversation, Lindsay and I had a conversation yesterday about this because.
By the way, can I say something about Lindsay?
Sure.
How does she get her schedule wrong at least once a week?
It's not that often.
Once a week, she shows up to the 5 a.m. when she doesn't have to coach it.
She's never coached it. She's never showing up to the 5 a.m. on accident. Number 1, because we don't have a 5 a.m. And number 2, and she's totally okay with me saying this, morning is not her jam.
But I see her Instagram, and she's like, "Oh, I messed up my schedule again. Guess I'll work out." It's like, how are you not?
So in all fairness, we have a lot going on here. It's been, which is great. And she's kind of moving into some new roles here as well. So it's an adjustment period for everybody. So but this is not this is not something that is unique to any one person. This has happened to every single person that I know has like had some sort of like FUBAR scenario that where you're just like, I don't even know how the fuck I made it here. Like, this is awful. So we were talking about it yesterday, just with regard to the lesson plans is one. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but lesson plans is one where I'm going to be straight up with you. I don't write out line item by line item a ton of lesson plans anymore. And the classes are noticeably not as efficient, for me at least, to the layperson. Like, I may be off a minute here or there. This progression might not have gone how I wanted it. But if I sit down for 5 minutes, rack my brain about a couple things, if I want to try something new, then I'm good. Then everything largely will go the way that I want it to.
So not writing a lesson plan for sure is something that, you can call it lazy, you can call it busy, whatever it is. Like, yes, you get to a point in life where I've coached so many classes, I don't necessarily need to write it out, but you do notice it as well as I have in the past. Like, if I don't show up with one, I notice it. But at a minimum, are you checking out what's
well, you want to know, like, the biggest hang up for lesson plans is the general warm-up.
Yeah, you don't think about what the movements are and whatever.
Well, I do, but I just, like, how general warm-ups are, man. It's just like, if you listen, everybody who's done this for any amount of time, much less, over 5,000 hours, like the general warm-up can be a real pain in the ass, just like by trying to make it creative, trying to change it. And then you can go too far in one direction and just make it creative, and it's no longer useful. You put in a game in there, and now I've actually just wasted time because I was trying to keep people engaged. Like, that is a very, very difficult balancing act with regard to the kind of presence and attitude while still keeping things technically in check.
For sure. But what I was going to ask you is, if you're not showing up with a lesson plan, what's the shortest period of time before you actually look at the workout and start coaching? In other words,
like, how quickly could I do that?
But not just can you, because I know we can both, you and I can show up to the 4:00 class at 3:59 and run a solid class. Because as we've talked about,
this is not a joke, right? And I'm sure you could do this too, but this is, and I know because I've done it, this is not something I'm proud of. But again, if you own an affiliate and you've had to and you'd had to Tokyo drift into a class for any reason whatsoever, I can make a lesson plan while reading the whiteboard brief.
Yeah, because as we've spoken about, it's really just going to be, okay, what's my drop dead start time? That's really what you're going to start with, right? Like,
right.
Okay, when do I need to start this workout? I could warm anybody up for any given movement with once I know that. But you're talking like the question is, what are some of the things you forget? How often does that happen? Or when was the last time it happened? Or, have you ever truly rolled in and had to do that?
The last question is yes. I just like walk in. What's the workout? What's up, everybody?
Where you are doing that, is it just, it happens like, oh, so-and-so can't make it, shit, I have to cover?
No. This would be a scenario where legitimately you're standing around, it's whatever, name a time, something 59, and you realize that looks like I'm coaching this class.
Yeah. Like, Lindsay,
I haven't looked at
schedule again.
I haven't looked at that thing yet. And so I'm gonna slide in there. Nobody's gonna be the wiser, and I'm going to just immediately put my coaching face on and walk up to the whiteboard as if I'm coaching this, and we're gonna start the class, and this shit's gonna go on time, and it's gonna be great.
First thing, is it the same thing I said? Like, do you just look at the workout and figure out? You can't have a drop dead start time without understanding how long the workout should take, and unless it's an AMRAP.
I mean, it's not like I've never seen the workout, right? So we will review it at some point. I may not have seen it in a week or two, but
right, you programmed it.
But yeah, we put it in there, so it's not completely foreign. However, again, this is not like some weird, where I have like the ability to read the matrix, but I've worked out and done, I don't know how many more workouts than I've coached. So I could put no thought into it, probably just read it. And as I'm reading it, I'm kind of running through my mental Rolodex of times and reps and all that stuff. And by the time I finish giving the general rundown of the workout, I could say, this is going to take about 8 to 12 minutes, or it should, if you do it that way. Again, this is not ideal. We're not recommending this. This is not something that you should practice, but yes, it is a thing that has happened.
So to motivate the listeners as experienced coaches, 1 to 10, Fern rolls in and has to start a class versus Fern shows up with a lesson plan. What are we looking at if you had to rate your class simply on that? Like, does it go from a 3 to a 10? Does it go from a 5 to a 6?
I don't know how this is going to sound, but it's probably like a 9 and to a 9.5 to a 10.
And no matter what, Fern coaching is a 9.
Well, this is where I want everybody to get, which is at some point it doesn't matter, right? At some point, just like you either have a skill set and have practiced and gotten enough dry runs that I just go into autopilot and I do this thing that I do every single day, right? This is also the kind of the same, and this is what I preach to a lot of new coaches, which is, if we're gonna make statements like world-class coaching and, going pro and all of those things, then quite frankly, you fucking better be pro. Like, it better not matter. It better not matter if your dog died. None of that stuff matters. Like, I should be able to flip that switch, turn it on, and do it with all the distractions, with no prep. Now, not everybody's there, and that takes lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of reps, lots of good reps, lots of bad reps, lots of evals, lots of people telling you suck, lots of messing things up. Like, that's not just something that you develop over time, right? And the whole point is like, it's not good. This is not braggadocious. The point is, like, at some point you get to a level, or you're trying to get to a level where nobody notices but you.
So with that being said, and I know right now at CrossFit Rife, you're actually not coaching many, if any, classes. Like, that's where you are as a
right now,
which, kudos to you. What was motivating you to show up prepared then? Because knowing I don't need to be prepared, you're busy, you got a wife, you got 2 kids, you got a box, you got a best hour of their day. Why put in more work? What motivates you to show up prepared, knowing the 0.5 of a difference doesn't matter?
Oh, I just love, meaning like currently, or like when I was spending way more time, when I was spending way more time.
I'm talking February, right? We're recording this in March on the calendar, but
I love this. I love it.
But how you love it enough that you sit there and write out plans, think about the workouts ahead of time?
No, but I mean, like, that morphs over time. It goes from like, oh, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write down lesson plans, and I'm going to Google search and get on YouTube and look for new progressions and like come up with a game. But again, dude, like, you do this for 12 years and there's a pretty deep Rolodex of stuff in there. Like, jokingly, that this is probably not a joke. You are probably at a point where, as our mini coaches, we're like probably forgotten more things that most coaches have learned at this point.
But so when is this okay? In other words, you have 2 level 3 coaches on your staff and a handful of level 2s.
When is what okay?
If Cassidy or Lindsay or Jake or any of your coaches showed up to you like, hey, Fern, just so you know, I'm no longer going to do lesson plans.
Oh, when is that okay?
Yeah.
When you can run a shit hot class.
So you say, cool, I'm going to watch your class. And if I notice that it sucks or isn't as good as your typical plan.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
because I think if you're proficient, you deserve that leeway. And then what are we talking about at that point? If you can't on a whim hit a timeline, well, then you should probably write more lesson plans. Now, this is not to say that even good, high quality, again, going back to the conversation we were having yesterday that Lindsay and I were having, I was evaluating her class, yesterday. And she was like, I've kind of been slacking on running the timelines because we were just talking about time. Like, everybody gets a little loose with their time. And that was part of the feedback, right? And for the record, Lindsay is a kick-ass coach, like one of the best around, like that I've ever been around. She can coach her face off.
For sure.
But I was just like, hey, the timelines are getting loose. Like, we got to tighten those up. And she was like, cool. She's like, I don't know. She's like, and she said straight up, she's like, I've just been, I've been like a little loose on the writing lesson plans. So then she did it. And then I took one class and then evaluated the immediate follow-on class. And it was wired tight. And we're talking about minutia at this point. I'm like, hey, look this over here. Look at that. Just weird little nuances,
And you also don't have to show up with a detailed lesson plan to run a solid class, right? Maybe
she really likes to, though. Like, that's how she likes to do it. I don't love that. That's just not the way I work, but I know other people that do that, like Denise Thomas. That's her gig, right? Like, she loves that stuff. And I know other people that just kind of like, even more loose than me. They're just like, these weird kind of a beautiful mind people, and you can just see algorithms floating around in their brain. Where in my brain, it's just dust.
But I guess the point being, it might not be like, hey, I do a detailed lesson plan to all of a sudden I don't do anything to prepare. It might be, I go from lesson plan to time blocking the hour, 3 minutes for the whiteboard brief, 7,
right.
And then
I think I see where you're going with this. So I think what's important to distinguish here is, and this is kind of an evolution that a lot of coaches that have worked here at CrossFit Rife that we will go through, which is there's a difference between did you and can you. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, for sure.
Like I can, but I didn't. But just because I didn't doesn't mean that won't be what unfolds, right? Because I don't necessarily, in air quotes, we're talking about like need. Do I need to write a lesson plan? I mean, it depends on what we're talking about, like need here. No, I don't need to, because I'm still going to run a tight timeline and I'll run it back to back to back classes. But if you're talking about a coach who is not super developed, then yes, now we are going to throw the need. You need to write a lesson plan. You need to submit that, because it's very obvious that you're not paying attention and that you're going over, or that you wasted time here, that you didn't think through that logistical hurdle, or that you did not have a progression prepared for that complex movement because you just whiffed right through it and skipped over it as if it wasn't there. So it depends, right? But I think where you're going with this is like, what should somebody who's pretty skilled, like what should the focus be on? Like, what are we leaving off the table when you get to this point where, it's a real thing, right? Like, some of this is Groundhog's Day and you're just like, I don't need to write a lesson plan. But then what should I be focused on?
Well, and I think something you said there that can't be glossed over is, and I think digging deeper into why we can show up without a lesson plan, is there's no movement we haven't seen. And if you give me a movement that I can't quickly think of a 3 to 4 step progression on, that I would use. And
right.
Also, not only that, but then think about what the other movements, so triage, there's snatching, there's muscle up, and there's push-ups, which, I'm not doing a push-up progression that day, right? I'm going to focus on this. And I know,
right, push-up will be part of the muscle-up warm-up progression, which will then go into the snatch afterwards.
Even you saying that,
right,
is something that you can do off the top of your head, where
right,
there's no movement, or if they're one of the foundational movements, I have the level 1 progression. So I think part of that not writing a lesson plan is knowing there's no movement that I'm gonna see that I can't come up with not only a game plan for, but an understanding of how long that game plan will take. Because let's use Amanda, right? Snatching and muscle up. Quickly, we know, okay, this should be a 5-minute workout. Some people are going to be in the 10 minutes. So I need to drop that start time 42, right there off the top of my head. That means I've got 0 to 42 to get them warm with a specific warm up for 2 complex movements. So we go 0 to 5 whiteboard brief, 5 to 12.
That's a long ass whiteboard brief for a couplet of 975, bro.
We got some complex movements.
I think I found the problem.
To talk about the fact that this was a regional workout, that it was named after somebody. There's lots of things going on there. Yeah. But again,
so you do like that kind of stuff, right? Which is something to talk about, right? Like, you like the CrossFit history, you like to loop in that kind of stuff, which is great.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to hear and for people to learn. But you're right, it doesn't have to be 5 minutes. I'm just throwing some times out there. We take it to 12 with the general warm-up, which is going to be very hip extension, shoulder related. because that's what we're doing. We're snatching and muscling up. And now I've got 30 minutes from 12 to 42 to get them really prepared, loaded, right? It's 135, 95, etc. And then I can start to work backwards. But that came from, 10 plus years of experience and not
having done it.
Exactly. I was going to say,
many times.
Probably coached Amanda 5 times.
Right.
So.
But you've not coached, but you've coached the movements way more than 5 times. Like,
oh yeah.
Imagine 5 times. I'm like, okay, it does, like at some point it doesn't matter. I know what time, I know how I want to do this. And then some of this is kind of gauging the class. Like, is it just happen to be a bunch of pipe hitters in here where we could forego a little PVC pipe work? We go right to the barbell, and I'm like, hey guys, like all of you guys here can snatch your body weight. So let's talk a little bit about like saving your grip and cycling a barbell and like being a little bit more efficient by stringing these muscle ups together and like how you should do that kind of stuff like that. Again, I'm going back to use Jomo's words, is just like your ability to compress or expand information based on the audience standing in front of you.
That's an interesting point that we can kind of segue into is, if you do show up with a lesson plan or you are coaching multiple classes in a given day, knowing when not only is it acceptable, but when you should vary the lesson plan or just the overall theme of the day. And that's something I evaluate as soon as, we tend to know who shows up to the 4 versus the 5 versus the 6. For me, the 6 o'clock, there's always a bunch of teenage kids in there. So I can't teach that high level stuff. It's more about herding cats. But I know at the 5, it's my veterans. It's, not necessarily the fittest at the box, but they know what they're doing. So on an Amanda day, maybe we do talk about touch and go versus how we hit triple extension or, hitting your first muscle up versus pushing away and getting multiple. So when do you find it's okay to vary your lesson plan? Is it something you would say show up with a lesson plan and be ready to call some audibles? Or do you schedule a lesson plan based on which class you're coaching that day?
No, so I don't do the latter. I don't have a lesson plan per class. I just know that some of them require a little bit more to be a little bit more assertive because they like the 9 a.m. Right? I love the 9 a.m., but you just have to be more assertive or they will walk all over you. It's universal. They will walk over, they will eat your lunch, they will hug you, and then they will tell you that you did a shit job, but they'll be back tomorrow, right? Like they will just crush your soul. But I do have kind of like a backup plan. Now, when do I use it? I will admittedly tell you less and less and less as the gym grows. So I find that I used to do it more frequently, and I'm not actually sure if this was because I was not as good of a coach before and I thought it was okay, or I think that it was just like the community was smaller, so the likelihood of having like 2 to 3 people in a class that were like pretty proficient and we could do that happened more frequently. But now it happens less and less because the classes are bigger and because the likelihood of having somebody in there who has for sure less than a year underneath their belt is very, very high.
Yeah, I think, and that just comes down to knowing your box, knowing your members. But how do you balance this? I think this is something a lot of coaches have been a part of. You got a great lesson plan. You got 12 people in class, but 3 of them are experienced and they're giving you that look of really, we're reviewing the push press with PVC again. Mm-hmm. What do you do there?
So, I mean, I've got something mind blowing for everybody. Maybe some people have barbells. Maybe some people have PVC pipes. Like what?
Or hey, maybe some people have barbells with 15s on it and give me this drill with 75 pounds.
Now, something that should be noted here is that typically that happens if they're not getting coached.
Yeah,
if we're just blindly going through a progression and I get no feedback whatsoever, then yeah, I'm checked out. So this is something, again, like put it back on yourself and take ownership of that. We like to reference Jocko's extreme ownership. If that athlete is looking bored and annoyed, that is probably my fault because I have not addressed them in any way, shape, or form. Be like, hey, Steph, move your feet out. Jen, drop your hips, take your hands out a little bit wider, rather keeping them engaged, because sometimes people just like need 1 to 2 things in there, which is like, hey, open your hips, jump a little bit higher at the top. or like move your feet faster, right? Like, so moving away from this kind of this technical and like changing the lens with which you look at this athlete just slightly versus like this person over here, the new person needs, okay, like the basics, like put your hands here, do all of that, where this person who is a little bit more seasoned, like the cue there could just be like, speed that up. I know you can move faster than that. And they're like, okay, right. So now things start to get a little bit snappier to the top, right? So see, like knowing where they're at and knowing what to give them and when to keep them engaged. Like push jerk is like a perfect example where people like mail that in. If you're going to take people through the progression, it's like, hey, yo, speed that up. Like, I know you know how to do this. Like, snap your elbows, dude. Like, let's get with it. Come on.
Jump harder, right? And I think really two things are happening there. For some, if they go back and listen to our recent episode on imposter syndrome, it's, do you have the confidence to coach those people, right? Do you have the confidence to coach people that have been showing up for 5 years? You're a new L1 and you have way less experience, but B, can you actually make them better? And I think that goes back to a concept of empty reps. Yeah, if you're the coach that's like, hey, it's push press, dip drive, go, and you're not saying, lean back, send your knees forward, get your elbows up, lock it out overhead, and you're not giving feedback on every rep, yeah, people are going to get bored.
Practically speaking, I think this is a tool that some people might be able to use, which is the likelihood of you having seen this person work out or train before is pretty high, if not 100%, right? So very rarely we talk about a scenario where like, I've never seen this person before. Use what you have seen in the past to help you coach them now, right? Like if you've seen them move well and move snappy and move fast and move efficient, and that's not what they're doing now, we'll get them to do that now.
Yeah, and even say, like, I've seen you move better. I've seen you move faster. Remember that?
Just be like, I know you can move faster now, bro. I've seen you do that. Like, move those feet, bro. Let's go. And they're just like, all right. Like, I don't want to do it. And it's just like, boom, that's a coaching moment right there.
Isn't it weird that we can remember I can remember like people's PRs. I can remember how they move, but I can't remember my birthday.
I mean, I can remember your anniversary.
I know you do remember that.
I'm just going to keep bringing it up.
So, okay, obviously, like we've gotten to it, showing up with a lesson plan, being willing to be flexible with that, but at the same time, knowing your audience and knowing, hey, they do need this, they don't need this. And also understanding, I think for a lot of coaches that are like, well, I got veterans, I got newbies, what should I do? Really, it should be the same thing. It's your ability to coach that impacts, their attitude, their behavior, and ultimately the enjoyment they're getting out of that class.
That is a very common in air quotes problem present to be like, what, like I'm struggling with this, to which I was talking to somebody about this recently. I was talking to somebody, might've been somebody to affiliate you, maybe not. Anyway, they're talking about like the coaches want the athletes to go through onboarding, right? So they're implementing a new onboarding process and they're kind of going through it. And they're like, coaches, like those people really need to be in onboarding. And we probably talked about this before, like that coach, that's a coaching problem. That is not an onboarding problem. Your coach should be able to manage that. That is a technical skill deficiency that we need to address. And if you feel that way, that you're struggling, like I look at these new people and I've got these experienced people and I struggle to blend the two, that is not we need to separate the class answer. That is my coaching is not where it should be. And that's okay, because that's how that works. But we need to acknowledge it first and say, okay, cool. I clearly am struggling balancing these two ends of the spectrum. What would allow me to do that better? Right. And going back to where we were before, a lot of that has to do with what is your prep? What kind of practice have you put in? Did you write a lesson plan? Because if you did, it should have accounted for that. Like in my brain, just probably like in yours too, like I'm always accounting for all of those all the time. Like there's not a scenario where I don't account for them anymore. It's just second nature at this point. Like I'm always accounting for starting with like the bottom of the barrel and working all the way to the top, but doing it efficiently to the point where people are engaged and we're getting to where we need to go in a timely manner.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is also something where you don't need to express it to the class. You should be so good that I can have a newbie and a veteran, and I'm not saying I'm teaching this because you're new or I'm teaching that because you're a veteran.
Oh.
I'm saying the snatch again, the newbie gets a cue on hip extension or maintaining their lumbar curve because we're triaging. where the veteran gets a cue on, hey, pop your hands open at the top to save your grip, and then re-grip here. And you're not telling them that. And, like almost like we talk about in affiliate you when it comes to social media, like you're not saying, hey, today's topic is training or today's topic is mindset, right, but you're giving this great experience and they don't even know
it. So you should be kind of like scaling up or down based on where everybody's at. And there's lots of little tricks and tips to keep people engaged, which is you can give a pat on the back to some of these people to make, if you know they're going to be aggravated by the PVC, be like, hey, Jay, I know you're pretty proficient with a snatch. Go ahead and grab a barbell for today. Like when we go through, everybody's on the PVC pipe, you're going to be on the barbell. And they're like, Christina,
they're not going to complain.
Feel special. Yeah, they feel special. I'm like, hey, Christina, I know we're still working on it. Go ahead and grab that PVC pipe. It's all going to be the same. We're going to run through this progression really quickly, but you guys are going to be working at your own level, right? And they're both like, okay, this is appropriate for me. This lady doesn't feel like that she has to manage a barbell, and this guy or gal over here doesn't feel like they're being treated with kid gloves using the PVC pipe. So there's ways to work around that. And then I just have to be quick on my feet. I have to be really active on the floor if that's the case, so that I can make sure that I get these folks over here, and let the good athletes know, like, I'm watching you. Like, just because I gave you that barbell doesn't mean that you get to, dick around.
Tying a bow on this, that all goes back to the lesson plan, right? We're using this snatch as an example, right? In my lesson plan, I have what I want to work on, what I want to see, and I should also have, maybe some things to work on for the newer athletes versus veteran athletes right in that lesson plan. And a reason why, unless you've got the 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 hours like Fern does, like I do, you should still be doing that lesson plan, because those are the things you can think of. Unless you can roll into class and think of all of those things, the topic is, what are some of the things a seasoned coach doesn't show up with? And ultimately it comes down with preparedness. The presence and attitude is going to be there. Your eyeballs are going to be there, so long as you're not coming off a bender, right? Your ability to teach is going to be there. It's your ability to run an organized, well-oiled hour, if you will, with or without a lesson plan.
That then leads into kind of like a little bit the more of the higher level coaching in my mind, which is when the technical stuff just comes to you second nature. Now I can start really digging on people's mindset, just like where they're at, like how hard are we going to hit that? What's the strategy that we're gonna unfold today for this work? Like, I want you to make sure that you do no less than 5 reps, but we're going to string these together. We'll try to move you a little bit faster. We're going to try to hit some doubles on this muscle up over here, or we're going unbroken. Maybe we scale this back a little bit. The goal for you today is just like keep that thing pegged at 5,000 RPMs and don't bring it down. So that once I get past all that, now I can really get into the stuff that people dig, which is kind of the strategy, the actual working out portion of it. That comes. Well, you have to earn it as a coach too, because you can't give people that information until you're supremely confident that you can make them move well.
You have to put the time in. You get there with 5,000 hours, and everything is second nature. So now I can think about the higher level stuff, but until you put that time in, it's not going to happen. So you need to, really this comes down to show up prepared, and prepared is really a lesson plan, but dig into so many things other than just time blocking the hour. And, what are you going to teach? Why are you going to teach it? What are you going to do for a newbie versus a veteran? And then ultimately, you can really get to that next level stuff, but you got to show up prepared.
Yeah, and that's where I think that's probably one of the first things that falls off for experienced coaches is they just stop doing those skill sets. Luckily for you and I, they're prematurely for a lot of people, but so not to say that I never write lesson plans. So luckily you and I are kind of still in the machine, meaning the CrossFit machine, where I still have to submit those to the flow for a level 2.
Level 2s, yeah.
I still got to submit that. But then what becomes the game there is like when I submit that lesson plan, when that thing unfolds, it unfolds to the second.
Yeah. And
like, regardless, I've never been in this gym before. It doesn't matter. Like that becomes now the game, which is like, hey, how good at this can I be when somebody's putting the screws on me? I've got 20 people that I've never seen before. I'm getting evaluated by a peer who is probably better than me. And they're going to take notes, and then they're going to brief the class on it afterwards. And they're going to, if I made a mistake, it's going to come up in the brief.
And guess
Right. So
if you don't make a mistake, you made a mistake. There's always
you still made a mistake. There's going to be feedback in there. And then this again goes back to like, did they realize the mistake? Are you unaware that there was a mistake, or do you know? And they're like, hey, what's up? And they're like, I did this. And like, I did see that. Let's talk about it. Let's unpack it. Let's look at it. So, that is it's part of the journey, man. Like that you have to continue to try to make that happen. And there's a guy here from Ukraine, and he came in to take the level 2, but he's been here all week, so he's just been hanging out, and he's like getting ready to open his gym, and he's just dude, this is just like so crazy. This is so different than what I've ever seen and all that stuff. And so he was like stuck around late last night, and I was just like, listen, bro, I was like, you're seeing, at least in its current state, something that has been in the works for 12 years. And
isn't it so great when you hear someone like, man, I've heard it plenty of times, and as have you, when you show up somewhere or a drop-in comes in, they're like, all of a sudden they're like, man, my coach sucks. My boss sucks, And
that doesn't make me happy. It makes me sad inside. But the point,
it makes you feel like, okay, I'm doing a good job.
But the point is, everybody feels like that at some point. Like, I remember how I felt when I was going through that, which is why, again, I like, people ask me all the time, can I come to your gym? And I'm like, yeah, the door is open. We're here all damn day. Like, come in, sit, sit on the side and just take notes, and just, Jay has to pee, everybody.
I have to pee so bad. I'm holding it in. I'm trying not to. I'm trying not to pee myself.
You're not wearing your daughter's diapers. They're probably the same size. But yeah, I think that's, the whole point of this is like, you need to have some way to keep yourself in check. Luckily we have, people on some of our staff to kind of like, if we start to veer, that it's like, hey, like, you need to tighten that up. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I need to tighten that up. And then progress your skill set. Like, how can I do something that's going to impress this person who's really fucking good, so
show up prepared, show up with a lesson plan, put the hours in, and maybe one day you don't need it. But I think in summation, what we are saying is it's never a bad idea to show up prepared.
So you never miss an episode of the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel and on all major podcasting platforms at Best Hour of Their Day. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of the best hour of our day. See you next time.